Even my slides look better than they ever do on their wonderful screen. So this film, which is so visual, is going to be great here. So there are all sorts of theories about what dreams are, and the ancient ones tended to be about they were messages from gods or ancestors, or you were entering some other real place in your dreams. And the recent ones have been, the not quite so recent ones have been things like Freud, who believed they were wish fulfillment and sort of our primitive impulses, and Jung, who thought they were representing archetypes and kind of higher thinking. And then much more recently, most of the theories are coming out of neuroscience and are about dreams being usually for one particular function. People argue about whether they're for memory consolidation or they're for problem solving, because there's some research that suggests that REM sleep in which they occur, but also some of the dream content aids various things, at least in subtle ways. But I really think that dreams are just best thought about as our brain thinking in a very different biochemical state. But you wouldn't ask, what is waking thought for? Or at least you wouldn't expect a 1 or 2 sentence answer. So I think it's kind of like that we're still have all of our usual thoughts and concerns, hopes, fears, personal issues, professional issues, and we're continuing to ruminate on all of the same things, but our brain is just in a very different biochemical state as we think about them. So we do know quite a bit about what the brain is doing during rapid eye movement sleep, which is the stage in which dreams occur. And we know that it's about as active overall as when we're awake. However, different areas are more or less active. And that purple area, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is right behind your forehead, the purple is the front of the head there, that is very much damped down, not completely inactive, but much less than when we're awake. And that is the area that's associated with linear logic, with sort of tight reasoning. It's the area that does censorship, both in Freud's sense of, no, that's the wrong thing to do socially, but also in the sense of, no, that's not the right way to approach a problem. So when that's damped down, it's not that we're not problem solving, but we're doing it in a much looser way than the conventional wisdom dictates. And the other of the two major differences is that the secondary visual cortex toward the back of our head, it is much more active even than when we're awake. It's active awake in processing. The primary visual cortex takes in the input from the eye and does the first processing, and the secondary visual cortex forms images. So whether we're looking at something or whether we're imagining something, it's active when we're awake, but it shows even stronger activity during dreaming sleep than it does during waking. So that's why dreams are so visual and bizarrely visual in many cases. So I do believe that the majority of dream content is somewhat about our personal issues, as is probably true with waking thought for most people, and that's certainly what most of the writing other than neuroscience about dreams is on. But in the super short talk, I just want to say really one thing about sort of what's usually the focus of most dream books, which is in understanding our dreams. Definitely you should just ignore the dream dictionaries or the popular press articles on the 10 most common dreams and what they mean. Because any sort of responsible dream interpretation is about someone who's going to help you understand your own very individual symbols and metaphors, and is not like going to someone who understands what this symbol always means for anyone whose dream it shows up in. So this is ridiculously oversimplified, but just if you have, I know some people in this room have probably read, 20 good books on dream interpretation, but just to get you started, if you're interested in this, any basic good technique is to ask questions that elicit the metaphor. So like if you've dreamed about a dog, you don't let anyone tell you, oh, dogs mean, X. They should be asking you what dogs mean to you. And sometimes instead of just asking you what might it be a symbol for, you actually get richer, less inhibited metaphors if you just try to say what a dog is. Sometimes we even say, pretend I'm from another planet and tell me what a dog is, to sort of get a basic description. And people do not give you dictionary definitions of most words. So for dog, you'll hear, oh, they're these cute little things that are our pets, but they're sort of almost like our children. We take care of them. And the next person will say, dogs are these big animals with sharp teeth, and actually I got bit really badly by a dog when I was 12 years old and still have scars on my legs. And a third person will say, dogs are man's best friend. They'll be more loyal to you than any human would ever be. So you hear three completely different directions to where that symbolism is going. And you just do this for the elements in the dream and then string together, try to think about anything in your waking life that is like something fierce that might harm you, or something that's come along that you need to take care of. The dog metaphor, and then whatever the dog was doing is an action, you get similar words. Is there something in your waking life that's like this little thing that needs taking care of, that's doing X? And again, just sort of plug in each metaphor, and often you get a kind of a rough meaning for the dream. And something you can do instead or in addition to is to really go with the emotions or even the body feelings if they're pronounced in a dream, and more do something like feel that feeling you felt when the dog was chasing you, trying to bite you, and you got that horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach. Is there anything in your waking life that gives you that feeling? So that is, again, ridiculously oversimplified, but it's enough that if you haven't been interpreting your dreams and want to try it, it's a tiny start. But some dreams are about things larger than our personal issues, and creations as diverse as Dmitri Mendelev's periodic table of the elements or Paul McCartney's song Yesterday have come to their creators in dreams, even though chemistry and music do not show up in the majority of dreams. But because of that brain slide I showed you several slides back, visual art has gotten by far the most inspiration from dreams, because most of our dreams are visually very rich. And anthropologists believe some of the earliest cave paintings, the more bizarre ones, may have been people depicting their dreams. So dream art may have been there as long as dream history at all. Visionary artists such as William Blake often represented dreams in their paintings, but it really reached its apex with the surrealists, who emphasized dreams as the best source of interesting imagery for art. This is Leonora Carrington's Crookley Hall, about her recurring over her whole lifetime nightmare of being at her childhood home, which really looked like this is where she grew up. And ghosts were chasing her first down the halls of the house and then out down the front path as she fled. This is Remedios Varo's invention of birds. And Salvador Dali did use his nighttime dreams that I've been talking about, but he was especially interested in the imagery we often call hypnagogic imagery, just as you doze off, that doesn't have a full-blown dream narrative, but people sometimes call it dreams because this vivid imagery occurs. And he said you should hold a key between your thumb and forefinger and just as you doze off, at pretty much the same time that the imagery is beginning to form, that otherwise you'd go on into deeper sleep and forget, is the same time that your muscles involuntarily relax. So the key will fall down and make a loud noise at about the time that you're having this rich imagery. So he recommended this slumber with a key technique to capture hypnagogic images. For artists mostly, although Thomas Edison held a ball bearing between his fingers, they didn't seem to communicate this, to come up with innovative scientific inventions. So this is a dream caused by the flight of a bee around a pomegranate by Dali that was obtained that way while he was dozing after eating part of the pomegranate. And then after studying dream art for most of my career, about 8 years ago, I decided to try making it. Dream images are just so compelling. And I'm not someone who would otherwise decide to paint anything that I see awake, but I'd been studying this for so long that I'm not showing you my early attempts, which look pretty hilarious. But I've been making dream art now for 8 years, and I'm in 7 galleries, and it's not my day job, but it's moderately successful. So this is one of my pieces called Night Ventures into Light, where there was a newborn baby bird in a sunny garden under a night sky, as can only happen in a dream. And these two creatures, kind of made of the night sky, came down and started nurturing the baby bird. This is a recent piece called Echoes, that was about this place where dead people were sort of calling out, and the central female character was barely wondering if she heard something, whereas the dog was giving them a "I see dead people," sort of obviously perceiving them look, so sort of two responses to them. And then this is my piece, The Diving Bell, which was about this unwanted voyage in a rusty bell on a very thin rope that these guys were taking, getting less and less happy the further they went. And cinema, as well as still art, has used dream imagery profusely. And Dali was commissioned by Alfred Hitchcock to design 2 dream scenes for Spellbound, and this is one of them. And in this scene, he used imagery as dramatic as the curtain of eyes, which actually came from a dream of his colleague Buñuel. They made one that had Dali's dream with someone covered in ants, and then Buñuel's of these eyes that eventually got cut. But in doing this, he used both of them again, but Hitchcock cut out his scene where Ingrid Bergman was covered in honey and then ants crawling all over her, and left the one that's derived from Buñuel. But he used that bizarre dramatic imagery, and then much more subtly, she's barefoot in a setting where you would normally have your shoes on, which is at least as dreamlike as the over-the-top eyes. This is a scene from Tarkovsky's Mirror, and he uses some fairly common cinematic images. First of all, just having a bed in the scene, something that sort of gives you a real strong message that the person is sleeping or about to or just has been. But then he had a fair number of flying and floating dreams, but they're much more common in film dream scenes than actually as dream content. Perhaps because we love them so much, most flying dreams are positive ones. Perhaps just because they're, again, like the bed, just a real obvious way of saying this isn't waking reality. And then more subtly, the way the background just isn't really there. It's just nondescript, and the key elements you're supposed to be paying attention to are in focus. Some people describe having a very detailed background and peripheral vision and all in their dreams, but it's not unusual for dreams to just have the sort of key things and people feel like they had no idea what was behind them or beside them or whatever. So he's doing that to make it dreamier also. And this last is from Akira Kurosawa's film that's simply called Dreams, and he put on film a series of his own dreams. So this is one of them that features a horned demon at the left and then giant dandelions as the other, obviously not reality element in it. And then I want to talk a little bit about lucid dreams because that's what's most relevant to waking life. And the basic definition, I'm sure some of you know this, but for anyone who doesn't, the basic definition of a lucid dream is a dream where you know you're dreaming while you're dreaming. And that's, you'll hear some other definitions, but that's the most accepted one in dream psychology. And many people, once they're lucid, will then have varying degrees of control over the dream, be able to summon a person they'd like to dream about, or remember they can fly in dreams and do so. But that's not necessary to the most common definition of lucid dreaming. Some people have no control, even though they know this is a dream they're watching. And most people who've had any lucid dreams, and some people who simply hear about them, want to have more. Most people, a few people find them disturbing, and it's not like they're no bad lucid dreams, but they're often very pleasurable, and whether they are or not, they're often kind of an interesting state of consciousness. So there's certainly a big movement trying to have lucid dreams. The film Inception really ramped that up more than Waking Life, which not nearly as many Americans saw, but should have, and you will. So if you're trying to have a lucid dream, if you've never had one or trying to have more, there are two steps that definitely in research, if people do this, they're likelier to have a lucid dream. In big groups doing this, more people have lucid dreams. They're still not like, you try this a couple nights, most people will. It's kind of hard to have lucid dreams more often than your base rate is. But these are the two things that do statistically increase them. One is a daytime thing that you do, and kind of in two steps, which is a reality check of whether you are awake right now. Just ask yourself, am I awake in the vaguest sense? And then, is there anything that looks impossible? Does everything look realistic? Let's see, there's a plausible looking woman up at the microphone, not a donkey. I'm sitting in a chair that looks plausible for a theater chair. They're going to show us a movie, not a flea circus. Just kind of, yeah, everything looks possible. If you're doing it awake, you should get that answer. And then to do a much more specific reality check where you take one or two things that function differently in your dreams and check on them. And these first three are one, nothing seems to universally be different in everybody's dreams, but there's some common ones that are for most people. So most people can't read text well. A few people can, but most people either they can't read it at all, it's blurry, it's in hieroglyphics, or if they read a sentence or two and look away and look back is the better test because it will say something else or the text will have disappeared entirely when they look back. So text to differing degrees usually doesn't function quite right. And then very similarly, timepieces usually don't function right. And that's about as true of digital ones and circular ones. They'll have the wrong numbers, they'll say times that, numbers that don't map onto a time system, or the time will not be advancing slowly and steadily in a logical order forward. Different things can be wrong, but if you know that timepieces don't work right in your dreams, they make a good one. And both of these can be checked very surreptitiously. You could be looking just at the text up on there and doing the text one, or you could be surreptitiously looking at your watch or smartphone. And then another one that's just as true anything even more universal, but not quite as easy to check, is the light switches usually don't work properly in dreams. So you do have to get up and go find a light switch when you're doing that one. But then if you flip a light switch awake, with very few exceptions, if you flip it up, the lights get brighter. If you flip it down, the ambient lighting gets much dimmer. And in dreams, sometimes in dreams it does nothing. Sometimes in dreams there's a delay before the lighting changes. Sometimes in dreams there's the slightest diminution in lighting, but not much. Sometimes you flip a light switch and it meows at you or makes a buzzer sound. So that seems to be the one that works for the very most people, but it's a little harder to just get in the habit of doing several times a day routinely than the others that you can do. And then lastly, I'll mention the other thing you can do is just come up with your own individual quirky one. Like I, somewhere along the line, noticed that I can't imagine something happening in a dream without it actually happening. I mean, awake, I could look at someone in the front row and picture either them alone or them in their seat levitating up. And I can kind of imagine people levitating, and yet I can still see them sitting there. But in a dream, it doesn't work that way. Either I can't imagine it, or they actually float up in the air when I'm trying to imagine them levitating. And I don't actually know how common that was. That's the one I came up with for me, and it's really easy to practice in any setting. So that's mine. And I have a student who says that his flying techniques in dreams is to lean forward, and just at the point where awake he would fall forward, that makes him take off into the air. So it's his flying technique in dreams in general, but he tests that awake now. He'll be walking along and he'll just take a big, and he if he's awake, he feels gravity about to make him fall over and pulls himself out of it. And in a dream, he would take off flying, and that's now, he used to have a lot of flying dreams where he wasn't lucid, and now that it's his reality check, that's his trigger to know. And then the other simpler thing that you want to do is at bedtime. The reality checks are for day, but the point is, if you do any new habit, awake is likely to eventually show up in your dream. If you're practicing these reality checks, eventually you'll be dreaming and go, oh yeah, it's time to practice my light switch, and lo and behold. But then the other piece is at bedtime to set an intention that tonight in my dreams, I want to be aware that I'm dreaming. It can be as simple as that statement, or imagining what it was like from this film if you've never had one, or if you've had some lucid dreams, trying to vividly remember that moment when you got, oh my God, this is a dream, this isn't real. So tell yourself that as you're falling asleep is the second big piece of it after practicing the reality checks. I'm gonna stop talking at you and show the film, and it is very good information and examples on lucid dreaming. It's a wonderful film. You wouldn't have to be that interested in dreams for it to just have all kinds of philosophically wonderful things, and the rotoscoping is fascinating. But unlike Inception, that says a few things that are true of lucid dreaming, but also puts out all these, time slows down to a 1/10 the waking when you're dreaming, and then if you have a dream within a dream, it's 1/10 less, and dream characters won't talk to you in Inception, and that's supposed to be true of dreams. In waking life, that's all very realistic, and dream characters do say things like dream characters would.